For in this wise our cause speeds on its way, from western lanes to eastern hills.
Welcome to Florida Sigma. Today I'm Charles Morse, happy to bring this new show to you, and with the idea, and I want to make sure that I bring him up right away so he can explain everything, and that is the one and the true Mr. Ruben Grant. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Charles. I'm the one and the true. Well, I appreciate that, bro. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Florida Sigmas Today. Now, when I first got into office as state director for the state of Florida, one of the things I talked about is increasing communication and utilizing social media and all the different platforms that we have out there to get information, to get items out to the brotherhood. One of the first people I spoke with about that was Brother Charles Morse. For those of you that don't know him, he is the grandson of our founder, Honorable Leonard Morse. And I'm going to let him tell his story, kind of, so to speak, but he and I have been working on various projects in Orlando for, it's got to be about a decade now, Charles, I think, that we've been doing stuff. Mm-hmm. And one of his passions is educating our community through his Monday night program, The Journey 2020, right on Facebook. I'm going to let him talk about that a little bit. But in doing that, I was like, man, wouldn't it be great to get some information out to the brothers in some kind of video format and you know, develop some kind of show that we can talk to brothers, get information out, and do things for them. And Charles was right on board, and we've probably been talking about this since February.
Actually, it's been longer than that, really. I'm trying to think, how long ago was it? Oh man, yeah, well, probably so, because you know, I had talked to you about it, and I was really, you know, excited about the fact that you wanted to do something like this. So, which I think is very beneficial because everything is driven by social media now. You know, and as you speak on the Journey 2020, the Journey 2020 been around since 2013. So we come to you every Monday at 7 p.m. Right here on Facebook, Twitter, thejourney2020.com, YouTube.
And so every brother that's out here tonight, y'all put that on your calendar. Go and check that out. I've been on the program. Some other brothers have been on the program. You need to check it out. But for tonight, the initial startup, one of the things that Charles brought to our ability is to talk with his aunt. And, yeah, bro, I jumped at the chance. I said, as soon as we can get it set up, let's get it going. And I brought in our state historian, Brother Brandon Nightingale, sitting here to my left, and told him, get ready, because I'm going to let him kind of lead the interviews along with Charles on that aspect, and just this conversation that we're going to have. So, Brandon, real quick, I don't know if you want to just do a quick introduction of who you are, your background a little bit there, then we'll do the same thing for Charles, and let's just get into it, brother.
I appreciate it, and I will say my introduction wasn't as good as Ruben, you know, but I'm happy to be here. I'm really happy to be here. Just a little bit about myself. From Jacksonville, Florida.
Jacksonville? What?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida.
I'm from Jacksonville. Okay. All right. Okay.
I got to shout out my dad, Timothy Nightingale Sr., who's also a Sigma, and also my brother, Timothy Nightingale Jr., who's also a Sigma. And just a little bit about me. I got my undergrad in history and public history program at UCF, and I'm now the assistant archivist over at Bethune-Cookman University, and I'm doing some good things over there. And you know, Ruben's always encouraged me to sort of put my skills towards Sigma, and so I'm delighted to be here, and really want to sort of start something here with these interviews. And you know, it's kind of tough getting these stories from a lot of these Sigmas, especially the older Sigmas. So the opportunity to sort of sit down and interview, you know, Sigmas across the state of Florida is going to be the big goal here within the next, you know, as the time goes on. So, but what a wonderful way to start off by interviewing, you know, your aunt, and so or your aunts, I believe. So. just happy to be here, and I definitely came with a lot of questions. I was asking everybody I could get a hold of today, you know, is there something, or at least the brothers, you know, is there something you want to, you know, ask or you want to know, you know, let me know, because I definitely want to try to get to what I can here. So, just like I said, just happy to be here, man.
Well, happy that you're here as well. It's always it's kind of a unique situation because when people ask me, you know, about my grandfather, it's always kind of funny for me, you know, people, oh man, you know, and I wish that I could have had my cousin on, who's a little older than me, because she has her stories, and my cousin Kathy, and she'll tell you about how it was when she was with him, and she would walk into the place with him, and she was like maybe 6-7 years old. She she didn't understand. And she said, Charles, these people just go crazy, and it'd be all this uproar, and you know, da da da. And she said, as a little kid, I didn't know what was going on, you know, but because she's older, she has those kind of stories. Now, it was funny because I just realized this about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I was thinking that my grandfather passed when I was 4, but he passed before I was almost 4. So my memory of him, I didn't realize it until it was 3 years old.
Wow.
So I do remember I remember a specific time that I was talking to my grandmother, and she was getting ready to put me to bed, and I remember like it was yesterday, and she said, go hug your grandfather. And I remember climbing up on his lap, and what I remember about that moment was his beard rubbing against my face.
Okay.
But for some odd reason, that just seems to stick inside my mind, because when I went to give him a hug, I remember the roughness of his beard, you know, touching my face, and I remember as a little kid, like, oh, okay, that's kind of rough, you know, as a little kid. But for some odd reason, that just stuck with me in that. And his library, I remember as a little kid going up and playing and seeing the blue and seeing the paddle and seeing all this stuff that I had no idea what it was at the time. And it wasn't until I was much older that I started to recognize and understand the blue and Phi Beta Sigma, because growing up I had no clue. You know, I had absolutely no clue. All I know was that I saw, because my grandmother moved out of that house that I'm talking about when I was 7. So he passed away a month before I was going to be 4. So she stayed in there with 4 or 5, about another 3 years before she moved out. And I remember in that house, I remember like it was yesterday, the upstairs, and where they knocked out the wall, where he knocked out the wall. And the story of that house was he had that house transported.
Really?
Yes. And when you think about it, because I remember my uncle, not my uncle, but my dad was kind of ticked off at my uncle for selling the house, because if that house was still there today, it would be a historical house.
Right. So
he had that house transported from somewhere else, and because it was on sticks. I mean, it was because I used to play underneath the house. I used to play underneath the house and go under there, and back when I was a little kid. But those are my memories of my grandfather in that house, and I remember that like it was yesterday, because it was a fun time for me. Plus, I got to hang out with my grandmother. So anybody that's in my family that knows me about anything about me and my grandmother, I was like attached to her hip. So so that's what that was. So with that being said, now I am going to introduce my Aunt Esther. And there she is. Hey, Auntie, how you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Hold on, I'm sorry, I'm gonna see if I can bring you up, Auntie. Okay. I think we can hear you now. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Hey, we have two gentlemen here just excited to talk to you. And I don't know, Linda, can you hear me? Hold on. Can you hear me, Linda?
Yes, we can.
Okay, okay. And I have my aunt Georgia and her daughter Linda. Okay, so fire away. You can ask. Well, actually, I'm gonna have my aunt Esther first introduce herself. Go ahead, Aunt.
Okay, I'm not a Morse by birth, but I'm married into the family, and I'm glad I did. It's been a fabulous journey. Um, when I met your grandfather, Charles, he said, "I understand you're thinking of marrying my son." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Why?" And of course, I didn't quite know how to answer that question. But I finally came up with an answer and I said, well, I think we're in love with each other. And he said, you think? And I said, yes, sir, I think so. And he let it go. He let it go, but I don't think he was satisfied with my answer. Um, but he was a very interesting person. He was very deep. He would make you think about things you didn't know you wanted to think about. Um, uh, so anyway, I just found him to be a very, very interesting individual, and he embraced me. A lot of people shied away from him because they thought he was, mm, I don't know how to put this, a little bit rough and gruff, but I didn't find that to be the case. I got along with him very well from the beginning, and we didn't have any difficulties.
Well, she was what? You were in college when you met him.
No, I had graduated from college, and I was about to go to New York University to a job, and that was the other question he had. He said, "You're going to be at New York University with all those PhD. You could marry one of those guys." Well, those guys were not African American. So I was not looking at them as prospects for husbands. But he thought because they were all so well educated that that would be you know a good road to follow. Well, so he and I agreed to disagree, and it was okay. It was okay. I respected him, and he respected me.
Now, well, let me ask you this right here. You
Okay.
you 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 pledged Delta.
Yes.
Right? You pledged Delta. So what was the conversation like the very first time when you talked to him and told him that you were a Delta? What was that like?
That was a little tricky because he really thought I should be a Zeta, and I played Delta when I was in college, like junior in college, and there was no going back. There was no turning back from that. But he was hoping that I would be a Zeta. Well, it was too late. It was just too late.
Oh, okay.
But
So,
he accepted that after we talked about it, and we moved on from there.
okay.
Brandon, what you got? I know you dying to jump in there.
Yeah, so I want to kind of give a little context. So can you kind of talk about your first, sort of that first impression when you came in contact with Mr. Morris?
When I first met him,
Yes. Can you kind of
I was a
describe,
little nervous about meeting him because I had heard that he was very stern and firm and all of that. But once I met him and he and I started talking, um, I, I I didn't have a problem with his firmness. We just got along. He thought I was smart and cute and intelligent, and our relationship just developed very quickly, and there was not a problem at all.
Okay, and now I'm very interested in sort of um, characteristics about him. Kind of. My first question would be, what kind of music
Oh
did he
wow!
listen to?
I never heard that one. You want to know? See, she laughing. What kind of music did he listen to? You know what? I've never. You know what? I wish I would have asked my grandmother that. Like, what kind of music did he listen to?
Right.
I wonder would he be able to handle the rap today?
No, no, no. He liked classical music. That was what he was into. And, I would sit there and listen to the classical music with him because I did not have a problem with that. And so we just got along famously.
No, no. And I asked Linda and Aunt Georgia this as well. I'm going to have you come on in a minute, Linda. But did Granddaddy play any type of instrument that you know of, Aunt Esther? I won't know. I
I,
won't ask you if
you
he
know,
could sing, but but did he play any type of instrument?
I heard that he played instruments, but I can tell you, I never saw him play an instrument. So I cannot attest to what instruments he was able to play
Okay,
at all.
hold on a second there, Aunt Esther. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Linda.
We're here.
Yeah. Listen, let me have you introduce yourself. We've been talking with Aunt Esther. Um, let me put your picture up. I got your picture up real quick. Because
Okay.
okay, okay. Go ahead and introduce Aunt Georgia and yourself real quick.
Okay, real quick, this is Georgia and Linda Morse. We live in Lakewood, Washington. And my mother was married to Leonard Francis Morse Jr., my father, for 63 years. He passed 6.5 years ago now, January of 2013. And my mother married my dad in January 31st of 1950. They met in 1948. And Dad was just in the military about a year and a half. And they met in Washington, D.C. at a Valentine's Day dance in 1948. So Mother had known Granddaddy. I think they didn't meet until maybe after Dad and she married, but she can fill that in. But she was a daughter-in-law from 1950 till Granddaddy passed in 1961. The day after, ironically, after my father, your uncle's birthday. He died on May 22nd. Dad's birthday was May 21st of that year, 61.
Right. No.
And so, do you want to hear from Mom a little bit? I'll let her talk a little.
Sure.
Say hello. Maybe ask her a couple questions to get her started. Hi there. How are you, love?
Hey, Aunt Georgia, how you doing? Love you.
I'm blessed to be almost 95.
Yes.
So what do you want to know from her first? What do you want to know?
What you want to know first?
So I want to just talk about. I really want to know about the man himself. What can you talk about? Maybe
The man himself.
a one word to describe Leonard Francis Morse Sr.
The question
Tell
is.
how you met Granddaddy. Go ahead. Say it again for us.
No, well, go ahead. Go ahead and let her say how she met Granddad.
And what was your first meeting of Granddaddy? I met him when I went down after your uncle got out of service. We went down to visit, and that's when I met him. Now, down where? Where you down in Jacksonville? Yes, Jacksonville, Florida. Were you already married? Oh, yeah. And you
I
met.
didn't meet him until after we got married.
Oh, right.
Okay, and I think the story goes, Granddaddy had a layover. He was going on the train to go speak somewhere.
He was going
And
to
you met at the train station.
station. Right.
That was literally your first time ever meeting him. It was at the train station. I think you brought a sandwich, you brought a lunch for him to eat.
See, in those days, they didn't serve a lunch on the train or anything like that. And I took him a lunch, and I remember distinctly what it was. It was a sandwich, an apple, and something else. And when he when he got off the train, he looked like Zorro with his big hat on and his cape and everything. And I never forget, he walked around me and so, "You're Georgia," looking me up and down and so forth. I said, "Yes, I am." And I gave him the lunch because in those days we didn't serve lunch on the train. And so I took it for him, and I never forget, it was a sandwich, an apple, and a piece of pound cake, I think it was.
See,
So that was your brief visit, and that was it.
Right. He was going to some kind of a conclave meeting in,
Maybe in D.C.
well,
It was somewhere in the east.
yes, I forget where it was.
So this is what, about 1950? What year is this? You've been married, had Dad gone to career and come back?
Oh, gosh.
So this, we'll say this is 1952.
1952.
Well, yeah, it has to be because, well, maybe 51. The reason I'm going to fill it in because some of the things, because I've heard this story so many times over the years. The first year, my mother worked when she worked for the government,
Mm-hmm.
Worked for the Veterans
the Veterans
Administration.
Administration, when she met Dad.
Right.
So they needed this Valentine's Day dance that was designed for colored people. So when they could meet the men that come in, you know, there at Virginia, so they'd have a date with somebody to dance with. And the way the story goes is my dad came with
Lost her. Wow. Oh, let me see if she's still on. Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. I still might have her. Hold on. No. Okay, I'm going to have to call her back. Honestly, you're going to have to fill in.
That's all right.
Do you know anything about the story of during that time, Aunt Esther? Because do you know when she stayed with the family, because she was there when when Uncle Leonard went off to the war, so she was there for a year. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't think I was a part of the family at that point, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
No, I came into the family much later,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I was not there during that time frame.
Right. Did you? Well, I'm sorry. I guess I should be letting you guys ask the questions. But did you ever know or take part of any of the conclaves over the years? Did you ever go to any?
I went to one that was yes, I went to one with my husband, and it was really a great experience. Loved every second of it, and they embraced me and treated me like I was one of their sisters, not a Delta, but they acted like I might have been a Zeta.
No, actually, know what I've always wanted to ask you, and I thought of it today.
What?
Did you ever on campus at any point in time, or did you ever have a conversation? Because what was it like back then when did you acknowledge to anybody that your husband, boyfriend, father was one of the founders? Did you ever have a discussion like that on campus, or did you ever talk with anybody about that as far as a
Oh, yeah.
Delta or any of the other fraternities or the sororities?
Oh yes, everybody that knew me knew that my husband's father was. Oh yes, that was well known on campus. You better believe it. But a lot of people didn't understand um, my being the wife of a Sigma when I was a Delta and I was the Omega sweetheart and all that good stuff. They just thought that was really kind of strange. Like, where did you go wrong? But it just worked out that way. I just felt like, the fraternities and the sororities were all brothers and sisters, and it was no big deal for me. But a lot of people thought it was very strange that I was married to a Sigma and I was a Delta and was the Omega sweetheart and all that good stuff. But it all worked out. I just figured we were all brothers and sisters, and it didn't matter.
Now, 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 what year did you pledge? What year did you cross the burning sands?
1958.
1958. Right.
Yes.
Where?
Yeah.
What college?
At A&T State University.
Yeah, yeah. I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Yes,
Did you guys have any other questions for her?
Okay, I wanted to ask a question. So can you talk about maybe something that a lot of people wouldn't know about Leonard Francis Morse Sr.?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
The question was, could you share something that we really don't know about him?
Right.
About your grandfather?
Yes. Hmm. Could you
Well,
share something
yeah,
that we don't know about him? Like no. Oh, I can share something that grandmother used to talk about all the time. That was, people think it's something new, but he loved frozen coffee. He loved frozen coffee. I come from a coffee drinking family. I mean, my grandmother drank coffee. My father had coffee for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My mother drank coffee, but he loved frozen coffee. So nothing new. No, I'm sorry, Aunt Esther. That just popped in my mind. So go ahead.
Well, what was the question for me?
Could you share something that you can tell us about him that we don't know?
Well, I can. He gave the impression that he was, tough and unyielding, but I found him to be very engaging and soft-hearted with me. Now, I don't know if he was that way with many other people, but your grandmother was really surprised, Charles, that he embraced me and had no problems with me, and we could sit out on the enclosed porch and talk for hours, and we just had no difficulties. No difficulties. A lot of people found him to be brusque and tough, but I didn't find him to be that way with me. He was just very much a gentleman, and he embraced me. He thought I was brilliant because I was uh, on the staff at New York University, and and he said, "Why don't you marry?" I think I mentioned this earlier. Why don't you marry one of those guys? All those guys are getting PhDs. And I said, but sir, they are all white. So that was the reason.
now you never had that conversation with my Uncle Decatur, though, right?
Huh? No,
Right?
absolutely not.
No, all right.
No, 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 no.
No. Right. Yeah, that's funny.
Charles, one of the questions that came from people online is, how was Founder Morse as the collegiate president at Edward Waters? And did she, did you have any kind of insight into that of, what type of person he was as far as treating with the students and things that?
Did you hear that, Aunt Esther?
No, I had no insight into that because I came into the family after the Edward Waters experience. I was not a part of the family when they were going through that.
Well, from there was some, even over a period of time, I can remember Aunt Mary Helen talking about the Edward Waters thing, because when he did what he did, because he went out around the country and he helped raise money for Edward Waters for a long period of time. And I can remember my Aunt Mary Helen talking about some of the money that should have went into the house with the Edward Waters College. And then I remember Dad going, well, we wasn't hurt for anything. So this is when I'm going to see my Aunt Mary Helen up in Ohio, she's sharing this story, about that. And then I would come back and have a discussion with my father. And my father would be like, well, that's just Aunt Mary Helen. We wasn't hurting for anything. But for a period of time that I know that he went out and when he was president in 1933 to 1934, I also have, when my father passed, I have things that I'm looking at that I can go and look at my house now that, like for an example, I see notes from like 1936. I see notes from 1932. I see a list of scholarships, that names that had written and stuff that I could see that he was writing, and it's acknowledged that he's at Edward Waters College. So it's kind of cool to sit there and you see these things from the 30s, So it's like, wow, And there's a list of, it says something like, it doesn't say this, but it's something like this: potential scholarships, and there's names, a list of maybe about like 12 to 15 names that are on the list. Things like that. Or I see notes from his Bible, those type of things that I had.
Now, Charles, we talked earlier, and his always having you be excellent. Right. You talk about the story.
Hold on. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
And him saying you had to be excellent. And the story you talked about was him and his studies. And how he started off and what he had to go through. Maybe if you could share a little bit of that.
Well,
to help some guys understand.
Well, I learned that, and I wish that I could get it back on the line. I learned that from my Aunt Georgia, from when she was on the. I spoke with her recently within the last. This is something she shared with me that I had no idea, and I asked Aunt Esther if she knew of this. I mean, we can ask her, but from what my Aunt Georgia told me, was that he was, because my grandfather was born 1891. Okay, so imagine being a black person trying to educate yourself back then. Right. So mind that you're trying to educate yourself back then. So with that alone, he got mad respect for me. So, but from what I understand, as she tried to explain it to what she could, was that he was given these old books and he was put in place where he had to study by candlelight. And she said he almost went blind because of the situation and how hard he had to try to maintain. And that's what I meant by his excellence. So I think as we talk about his brashness and his discipline, I think because he had to be so disciplined and it wasn't given to him, I think his mindset was, I worked hard, I accomplished, why can't you? So I think that's where that harshness and brashness, because he was so disciplined. Most of us are not disciplined. I know I don't have his discipline. You heard me say 1,000 times, that gene that went into the Morse, it skipped over me. So, that gene, that excellent and what he achieved, and all of his children were excellent. My father, unfortunately, was born with some difficulties, but his siblings, masters, and my aunt was a doctor and had her own practice, and they all were excellent. My aunt Georgia, my aunt Dot, and even her husband was a chemist. So that whole background of discipline and education, and so that's how he saw life to be. You uplifted yourself and you raised up from hard work and dedication and your education and achievement. And I see my aunt, and she's nodding. So
Yeah.
you want to speak to that, aunt?
Well, he always respected people who were driven, who were um, anxious to achieve greater heights. And I think that's why he and I got along so well, because I come from a very poor background, from a farming family. I'm the oldest of 10, and we didn't have it easy, but we kind of pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps, and I was determined to go to college no matter what. I was going to go to college because not many people in my family had gone to college before me. That was just not something they did. But when I uh, went off to college, it sparked something in my cousins and other people in the family. And so now there are a lot of college graduates in our family. But before that, there were none, none.
So now you kind of better understand, because even for myself, there's a lot of things that I didn't understand about him. But once I heard my aunt Georgia tell me some things, and I wish, like, for an example, I just reconnected, and I think I shared it on Facebook with a gentleman by the name of Charles Scrivens. And Charles Scrivens was really a family member. He was very close, to the family, and to the point that I remember him very well, as a kid. And as a kid, he was always around. So whenever you heard the name Charles Scrivens, it was just a fact that he was just part of the family. Now, mind you, as a little kid growing up, this man is also a trailblazer, which means he was part of the first blacks to become police officers in Jacksonville. And so as he tells the story of that, but he was also influenced by my grandfather. And he said something to me, because there's another story behind it, but he said something to me to show you the impact. Now, he said something that was kind of like, because when he said it, I kind of looked at him and be like, oh, okay, I get it. Because my grandfather had such an influence on him.
Oh,
Like
yes.
this. He named his second son after my grandfather. Right? So, but he said something that lets you know the impact. He said this about 2 months ago when I was talking to him. He said, I named my second son after your grandfather because I thought that might make my son like him. I was like, to that degree. Because he was talking about his discipline. He was talking about his excellence. He was talking about how he was driven. He was talking about how you had to be on your best, on your P's and Q's. I mean, that's the first thing he said, you couldn't do this. And even when my father talked about it, was like, no, man, you couldn't play around when you was around my dad, man. He was about it. So whenever you heard anybody talk about my grandfather, that's how they saw him. And I can remember my grandmother telling. I've heard a couple of people tell this. Well, there was one where he was teaching, and I've heard a couple of people. But it was funny to hear my grandmother tell this story. Was when he was teaching, and I don't know if he was at Howard. No, he was at Edward Waters, I think. And he said, for all the ladies sitting in the front row, y'all can close y'all legs right now because Dad ain't gonna get it. Now I have more people tell me that story, but more importantly, I've had at least 4 people tell me this story, the Rosie Park story, that he did the Rosie Park thing way before. And I don't mean to diminish what Rosie Park, but what I'm saying is, if you know how God works, people do things, and however God says, I'm going to shine the light, I'm going to shine the light. But he did the Rosie Park thing. And as a matter of fact, when I spoke with Charles Scrivens about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he shared the same story. So if many people, and I've had 5 people tell me this story about how one day he was on the bus, and honestly, you can tell me if you heard this story. You know, the white lady came in and said, I want to sit down. And he was like, no. And she said, I'm tired. He said, well, that's not my problem. And he refused to give this lady the seat. And not only that when he got off the bus, he went and wrote the company and told them about how it was wrong that he would have to sit in the back of the bus. The owner responded back to him as well. So that was him. You know, and honestly, I don't know if you heard that story, but did you ever hear that story about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was on a mission. He was on a mission. He was not going to let anybody belittle him and make him think he was less of a person just because of the color of his skin. He was not having it. He just wouldn't tolerate that.
Now, I did hear this. I heard this from my father, and I heard this from a few other people. They said, I think what really saved my grandfather was that white collar that he had around his neck.
Yeah. That had a lot to do with it.
Because again, you got to remember the time frame. Okay, so when you that bold and you in the South, I mean, you see what I'm saying? So they said that sometimes there would be some prayers going up for my grandfather. You know, because he would speak his mind. And so they said they think a lot of time it was that white. Do you know who Randolph Brace is? Reverend Brace is? Okay.
Randolph Brace.
Right. Aunt Esther, Reverend Brace is a well-known pastor here in the area. He's very well known. He also used to be the president of the local NAACP and blah blah. He's always pushing for civil rights, blah blah. But he's very well known here in the area. And I worked at his church for about maybe 5 years before he retired. And he said he was from Jacksonville. So when I actually got a chance to really know him, we were sitting down talking. And so I said, you from Jacksonville? He said, yes. I said, do you know my grandfather? And I mentioned my grandfather's name.
Reuben.
And I cannot tell you how he just stood there for 5 minutes and he just looked at me. I'm serious. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me and he kept saying, Leonard Morse is your grandfather? I went, yeah. And he just did like this. I'm serious. He went,
it was like
and for about 3 minutes, all he said was, he was peculiar. And he said, I always remember the hat that he wore, and he was peculiar. For about 3 minutes, for about 5 minutes, I'm serious, he just stood there and he looked at me. And he just kept going, Leonard Morse was your grandfather? I said, yeah. And he just standing there, Leonard Morse was your grandfather? I said, yes, yeah. He was peculiar. And I'm like, and I'm trying to figure like, well, what do you mean? And he said, he was peculiar. Because I mean, if you know Reverend Brazier, you know Reverend Brazier talk, right?
Yeah.
talk. But that was about maybe 8 years ago. And I just had a good conversation with him last year actually it was earlier this year because it was something to do with Black History Month, and we was at an event with Cat Gordon, and he was one of the guests. And whenever I see him now, we always talk about my grandfather because he knew of him from Edward Waters, and he talks about him in whatever that is that he just always say he was peculiar. So he loves having that conversation about whatever that is, and to this day he still go, Leonard Morse was your grandfather. Right, and then he said something in reference to when we talked in February that he did acknowledge that I didn't know at the time, because he did say something about he saw my father, because he was describing somebody that he saw walking towards the church all the time, and as he described him, I go, that was my father. He go, oh, okay, but he whatever that is, he's peculiar.
Well, we got a few more questions coming from folks out there. Just curious about if you ever talked about the starting of the fraternity, or how he felt about the organization, you know, in his time frame of how it had grown and what it was doing and things of that nature.
That would be a conversation, and unfortunately, to be honest with you, my aunt just walked away, but that would be a conversation, honestly, and unfortunately my aunt passed away. The true historian of the family was my Aunt Dot. It was the one that did the interview, and she was the one that could tell you, like, for example, she went into details about things that I didn't know. You know, like I said, like she broke it down to me about how it came to be, because you know my grandfather was a dark-skinned gentleman, and how they came together, and part of it was for a place for dark-skinned people to study and to come together, and part of that and some other things that she shared with me that I had no idea, because you know back then, you know, it's hard for us to fathom, you know, the mindset and what was going on at the time, and how things were. But my Aunt Dot would be the one that would be able to answer that question, and unfortunately she passed away, and I wish that my cousin could have saved that interview that my aunt did with him, that would have answered all those questions, because she asked those kind of questions. And from the start to the finish, how did all of this come about and why, and tell me all the things that was in between. Because you know, I mean, here they are, these young kids in college, but they were geeks, man. They were geeks. I'm serious. You know, they were geeks, and so I gotta not. This is a little off cuff, but I have my Aunt Dot that I was just talking about. Her son, very high IQ. His son, high IQ is even higher. He went to Harvard, and I had a chance to go in. They asked me to come videotape the wedding, And so now I'm around him, and it was about maybe 8, 9 of his friends from college. They were all white, but they were geeks. And when I say being there was like being at the movie, the Revenge of the Nerds. No. I'm saying it like
Yeah, that's how they work. I got you.
it's they're different, and I'm standing there like this, cause I'm just in awe because of how their processes work. It don't work like us. It just does not work like that. And I'm standing there and I'm in total awe. And so when I say, like, for my grandfather, who was definitely a geek, he was a bookworm, and when I tell you, you in this room right now, right? I mean, you see the size of this room, right? The room was double this that he knocked down the wall. The room was double this size, and it was full of books, nothing but books. That was his library. You know, at the house that I told you that he moved, that he had, right? And so you walked into this massive room of this library that was just full of books, and I guarantee you that man probably read every last one of them. That was just him. That's how he operated. That gene's hitting.
I do have a question here. You know anything about maybe sort of the people that he looked up to and that he sort of idolized or sort of got that inspiration from?
You know what? That would be a good question. Auntie, did you know anybody that he looked up to? Anybody that he admired? Even though we need to put some light on you because it's real dark in there, Auntie. Do you have a light in there? I mean,
Yeah,
you're yeah. There you go. You're
yeah.
absolutely too beautiful for us not to see you now.
No, I don't know who he got his inspiration from, but I think he was just driven on his own, to tell you the truth. I mean, that's kind of what I gathered from him. Now he may have gotten inspiration from other people that he had been exposed to, but I never heard him talk about that. But I know he was definitely driven. He was determined to be exceptional at whatever he did, and that's just who he was.
Um, Let me ask you this right here. Uh, what part of Uncle Decatur that he took away from his father? And we're talking about a husband. What do you think
Um,
that Uncle D took away that you say he's he's just like his dad?
the stubbornness and um, the fact that he's always right no matter what. Like,
Okay.
uh, but I don't think he had the drive that his father had. In fact, I know he didn't. Um, when he and I met, I was a scholar at A&T. I was, always on the honor roll and all that, and he was struggling to get through his classes. And he said, uh, "Oh, that's a good picture." He said, "I don't know how people get to be such scholars." I said, "Well, your dad was one." He said, "Yeah, I know, but I'm not."
Wow. Right.
Now,
But I
you know
think
I
that's
gotta
why
ask the
his
question
dad
to
and I got
Charles.
along well, because um, Grandpa Morris realized right away that I was an academician. I was going to excel in whatever I did in school, and he admired that, and that's he wanted his children to be that way. I mean, and most of them were really
Right. 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 Ruben has a question for you.
okay.
Just a random question of, you know, on his meals there. I've always wondered, that I found that I know your George talked about the pound cake. You know, what kind of meals did he like? What the foods that he preferred and things. You know, Charles, you talked about the frozen coffee long before Starbucks ever got hold of it, or Dairy Queen. But maybe some other things, just kind of personal traits that things that he liked. You know, was it sweet potato pie? What was it?
Charles, you would know more about that than I would.
Let me say this right here. Back then, honestly, you'll be able to testify to that. Was that meal time was totally different than it is now, because everybody sat down at the table. Everybody was there at home at the same time, and you sat down. And I'm showing some pictures that I put together of the family, and so on and forth right now. But
I'm loving.
In reference to, I can remember at the age of maybe 4 and 5 and 6 years old, at the house that I'm talking about that he had moved. I remember sitting down at that table, and every dinner there was always iced tea. I just, for whatever reason, there was always iced tea. But my grandmother cooked every day, but she cooked the typical meal. So I'm assuming that the typical meal was what she cooked, for him as well. And so there was always the rice and the cornbread, and and one of the things that I know that was popular was the short link sausages, and there was the honestly the short link sausages, and okra and tomatoes and collard greens, and the typical meal. So that's what she always cooked. So I assumed at that time that's what that's how it was. Yeah. So and the thing is that, and I still remember sitting down, and I still remember that dining room to today, how it was in that house. It was a 2-story house. It was a 2-story house. Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk or ask a question of. So we sort of talked a little bit about the sort of pre-Rosa Parks story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see if there are any other kind of stories, sort of pre-civil rights, because I know he was around during that sort of pre-civil rights era. So is there any kind of, or any other organizations maybe that he was a part of that sort of predated the civil rights movement?
You know what? That would probably be a question that probably Uncle D could answer. Do you think Uncle D might be able to answer that at some point in time, Honesta?
I think he could. I think he probably could. He's probably the only one now who could answer that question.
Right. Because I was having that conversation.
If the guys want to get back to him at some point, and just get him on the phone for a conversation, I'm sure he would welcome it, because he loves talking about his dad.
Oh, definitely, and I'm going to say to you, I'm going to give you the task, Aunt Esther.
Okay.
I'm
Let
going
me
to
write
give
it down.
no.
If I don't write it down.
No. You don't have to write this one here down.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the task that we can do this with Uncle D.
Okay. Oh yeah, we can do it.
Okay.
We can do it. He would love it.
Yeah. So, and I'm putting this out there. I guess I should ask you guys. Could we again do this, because he can probably fill in a lot of the blanks, because I think that he's second in line as far as, because I think my Aunt Dot was first, and I think he would be second in line that could answer a lot of those questions, because like I said, Aunt Dot, without a doubt, could have answered every one of your questions. Unfortunately, she's not here anymore. But we're gonna see, and I'm gonna stay on Aunt Esther to say what you guys. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put you in touch with her so you guys can work out the date.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
Sounds good.
right. And so we can have him on, and trust me, he can fill the whole hour and something.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh
Oh yeah,
yes.
oh yeah. Honestly, can you kind of go over the little model, because I've never seen it, but I've heard him talk about it quite a few times. A little model that he took around. What can you describe that? What is that? That he
That
would take around?
little house, the house he built.
No,
Is that what
well,
you're
he
talking?
said when he would go speak, he had this little thing that he would carry with him. To I guess it was his props. Do you know anything about that?
You're talking about my husband or your
Yes,
grandfather?
yes, mm-hmm,
You're talking about my husband.
yes.
Um, to be honest with you, I don't know what that was. I'll make a note to ask him.
Yeah, because he said whenever he would go out to speak to anyone, that he had put together some little props. I don't know if it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so
Well, he's gifted and talented when it comes to that kind of thing.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
because
Because I mean,
here.
he's an artist.
So
He draws,
yeah,
and so he has that talent. So
yeah.
he's a paint and draw, and he's an architect.
Oh
That,
yeah, absolutely.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah,
he'd
yeah.
love to do all that. Show it off.
Another geek. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
made it.
you guys got any more questions for her? And I apologize that we lost my Aunt Georgia, because she was very knowledgeable as well. Um, Again, I learned a lot from her when she talked about what it was like to live with him for a year. She probably could have answered that question about the
Yeah,
meals.
that's
Because I'm telling you, everybody in my family could cook. And that's the thing is, all the children could cook. All of them could cook. Because my dad, oh my goodness, if nothing else, man, he could cook. Oh yeah, oh yeah, 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 yeah. And they all and he would say all of them can cook. And I would go see my Aunt Mary Helen, and I would be her guinea pig, because she would go, "Oh, I tried something new in baking, and here, I'm like, oh." So yeah, but, So with that being said,
I did have one last question. I guess we kind of ended on this one. Can you maybe talk about sort of maybe your last sort of memories that you have, or that you remember with Founder Morse?
that's he was asking your lasting memories of granddad.
Oh, is he asking me or you?
You.
Both.
Well,
Oh,
I'm saying, I mean, that's right. I was almost four, but yeah, he's
almost
talking about
four.
you, Aunt Esther.
Okay. Well, he was a person that when you met him and were around him for a little while, you didn't forget who he was, because he just had that kind of personality. He was impressive. He didn't talk about small stuff. He was always above and beyond the minutia. And I think that's why he and I got along so well, because I could hold a conversation with him, and my husband was surprised when I met him the first time, because his dad and I sat out on the screened-in porch for like a long, long time and just talked to each other. And my husband said, "Whew, he doesn't do that with a lot of people."
Mm,
So
wow,
it was
wow, wow. That's kind of like me hanging out with Aunt Mary Helen, and
hmm
Helen, which is her daughter. You going to see Mom? Yes. You a brave man. Like, she was easy to hang out with. She easy. you know, I just saw her as Aunt Mary Helen. But Grant, when you again, I would like for you guys to talk with Charles Scrivens. He's another one that can give you what see, and he was on the campus with him at Edward Waters. He was going to school there, and the last picture that I posted came from him. I posted a picture about 2 months ago. As a matter of fact, it's the last picture, and it had a date on it, and I posted on Facebook, and what it said was that picture was taken about 3 months before he died, and I don't know if that was like the last picture that but that picture was taken about 3 months before he passed away,
Before your grandfather passed away?
Yeah, in 19.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in 19. It was.
61.
It said the date on the date on the picture was February 22nd, I think it was.
Yeah. How did he pass?
1961?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, because he and my dad died 2 weeks apart from each other. That was a tough time. Real tough time.
He had some respiratory problems, I think. But I do remember my grandmother talking about when he was in the hospital, and they had the what is it when they I forgot what you call it, but the plastic over you and right, yeah, there you go. They had oxygen tent over him, at the time, and I do remember her telling me this, and honestly, I don't know if you ever heard the story, but I remember grandmother telling me that they revived him, and he told her, if that ever happened again, don't you do that, because
No, I never heard that one.
yeah, according to her, he said where I was and where I went, I was good. So he said, don't you, yeah. She said, he told her, if they have to revive me again, tell them not to.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
But I remember her telling me that when I was a kid. Well, I was young, I was probably like maybe 12, 13 years old when she shared that story with me. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yep. And my grandmother, I shared a picture. There was a picture of her. But honestly, I'm going to share something with you that there's someone that I've been knowing for years. And it was when I was telling you that when I saw Reverend Bracy at Cat Gordon event back in February. So when we went to Cat Gordon event back in February for Black History Month, because again, I'm standing there talking with Reverend Bracy as he was peculiar. We're having that conversation. So as Cat Gordon walks in, we're talking about my granddad. So she kind of hears the conversation. And so she said, Leonard Morse. And I go, yeah, Leonard Morse was my grandfather. And she turned around and she looked at me and she went, Leonard Morse was your grandfather? I go, yeah. She and my grandmother had a relationship. And it blew me away because we've been friends since like 1997. Yeah, since like 1997. And there was something that my grandmother gave her a seat in reference to a conference that had to do with the Zetas or something like that. Mm-hmm. That my grandmother did something for her, that she just gave up the seat or something at a conference or something like that she was trying to get me to understand that because I'm standing like, and she had been to the house back in the day, and I'm standing there, it's like I was probably some little snotty nosed little kid that you walked in, and and she's
3
like,
years old.
But she was sitting there like, oh, and she kept going on and on about my grandmother this and my grandmother that and my granddad and da da da. And all this time, I still think about, you knew my grandmother and my grandfather.
Amazing.
Like, wow.
All work, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, but any other thing that you like to share before we allow our beautiful, handsome young men to close us out? Aunt Esther?
No, I'm just proud to be part of the Morse family, even though I was not born into the Morse family. I think I've adjusted pretty well over the years.
That's a nice way of putting it. Okay. Well, how long again? Say again. How long have you been married to Uncle Decatur? How long have you been married?
58 years.
50. Wow, 58 years. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, special place in heaven. Special place in heaven.
And I tell you, listen, I didn't know how to cook when we got married because I didn't like to eat, so I thought cooking was a waste of time. Like, why would you waste all that time cooking and people sit down and inhale the food in no time? So that was not my thing. But then I married Decatur and realized he liked to eat. I thought, oh my God, I better learn how to cook. But my dad said to my mom, that boy's going to bring her right back to you when he finds out she doesn't know how to cook. But I enrolled in all kinds of cooking classes, gourmet cooking classes in Europe and all that. So I do pretty well now. But I didn't know how to cook anything when we got married. I didn't want to cook. I thought that was a waste of time.
Oh wow.
But
Oh
it's
no.
all good.
Now, how often would you come to Jacksonville? How often would you see granddaddy back then when you guys first got married?
About every 3 or 4 months.
Oh really? Oh wow.
But the first visit was the interesting one because he was sizing me up and figuring me out and all that good stuff. But after that, it was piece of cake.
Okay. Well, tell Uncle D that we're looking forward to talking to him. Looking forward.
I've made a note to tell him that, so he will be ready.
Yeah. And what was it like for Uncle D when Ward played Sigma? What was that like when his son played Sigma? What was that like for him?
Oh, Decatur was over the moon with excitement. He was just thrilled to death.
Yeah.
Thrilled to death. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was the Omega sweetheart, and Decatur thought because of that Ward might go Omega, but he didn't. He was ready to be a Sigma. Decatur was thrilled. He was thrilled. Pieces.
Oh yeah. Well, you tell Ward I would have broke both his legs.
And what was left, his daddy would have broken them. Yeah.
All right then.
Well, guys, it's been nice chatting with you. I hope we gave you some of the answers you were looking for.
Well, Miss Esther, we absolutely thank you for spending this evening with us. Charles, thank you for helping to set this up. Unfortunately, we lost Miss Georgia, but hopefully we'll get a chance to speak with her again and with Decatur as well. And I'm just grateful for, again, you allowing us to have an opportunity just to speak with you tonight. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I will let Decatur know that you guys want to meet with him, and we'll make that happen.
All right.
Sounds awesome.
We'll work through Charles.
And, on that note, again, thank Brandon, thank Charles. Definitely appreciate y'all, and we hope to do some more things and have Decatur on with us real soon, and perhaps get Georgia back on, and again, bringing additional information, additional interviews to the brothers of the state of Florida. We appreciate you. God bless you. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight.
Sure
Our
thing. God
cause
bless you.
speaks on its way. Fear